Yeah, I think this is a very important point because I've also seen it in American courts being misunderstood, and I'd like to comment a little bit about that. There have been historically cultures and continue to be cultures and religious interpretations of other religions where when a man pays money for a woman, it's not to the woman, it's to the father or somebody else to get the right to the woman. When Islam appeared 1500 years ago, that was the practice in Arabia. And Islam came to stop it. And the Quran is very clear that the husband, the prospective husband, has an obligation to give a gift to the woman he intends to marry. And the word gift is used very clearly in the Quran. And of course, the gift would be to show serious intention of marriage. It doesn't have to be monetary, as we state in the document. It could be literary, it could be many other things. But custom has made it monetary. And that's why Sarah mentions that it is a good safety network for Muslim women to have a mahar. People who misunderstand it and try to strip the woman from that right actually are not helping the Muslim women. So we need to look at that. I've seen lawyers in the US and judges who still believe in the stereotype that mahar is equivalent to the notion of dowry, which is to buy the bride price. And we're here to say, no, don't draw facile analogies. This is not about Islam. This is about some other religion or cultural practice. In Islam, it's a gift to the woman, a blessing that God has given us to make our life a little bit easier in a patriarchal society, financially easier.
The final sections of the document deal with the economic consequences of divorce on women, and this is something which I think it would be hard pressed to find any organization or party which would deny the fact that divorce negatively impacts women to a much higher degree than it does men on most cases, and we see much higher percentages of poverty amongst women post-divorce than we see amongst men in the same situation. And so this is actually a section of the document. This is actually to a large degree, the heart of the document. And that is an idea that Karamah very much understands and very much supports. It is true that women often face, greater challenges post-divorce, especially in terms of their economic situation. What we become concerned with, however, is how this issue is addressed. In the document, in the concept paper itself, there is this implicit understanding that, again, a uniform means of addressing this issue of essentially developing norms which advocate for property laws, which essentially split, for example, property in half between both parties, would somehow be the best means of dealing with this issue. And what we become concerned with is that, one, how realistic is it, or how effective would it be just to advocate for these types of policies in light of women's realities? We have to really understand we have to really think about, it's one thing to advocate for something, it's another thing to really think about what the situation is of these women and think about what would actually be effective for their own realities. The second thing is we also must understand that even in the United States, there are differing legal regimes in differing states. Some states do have community property regimes and others have equitable property regimes. And so this is something that we're still dealing with in the United States as well. It's a conversation that is occurring. And so to necessarily say that one legal system is somehow, superior to another, and that by essentially removing that legal system we're somehow handling the problem, that is not the answer. On top of that, to somehow say that just by changing the laws to a community property regime, that is also not the answer, simply because we know that with community property regimes, one of the large issues that still comes into play is the fact that women have much lower levels of legal literacy. Women are often unable to advocate for their rights. And so that becomes a fundamental issue, is how do we help women advocate for themselves? How do we help women advocate for their own legal rights? We know that in New Jersey, for example, the court must consider 15 different factors in dividing property. And these factors involve issues related to material assets as well as non-material assets. And so we see that there's a very nuanced way of dealing with this issue, primarily because property is brought into the marriage from a variety of ways. And likewise, there are many different kinds of contributions brought in to the marriage as well. Some of them material, some of them not material. And so it's very important in coming up with, in addressing this problem, to really think about this from a very nuanced perspective and advocate as well the fact that women do bring, in many cases, non-material assets to the marriage, and that this should very much be recognized, and in post-divorce situations, she should be awarded assets and wealth in these cases. Towards the end of the document, the document does address this issue and says that women should be awarded assets, even for, women should be awarded assets even for non-financial contributions. And this is something we would not only support, but something in which we would say that there is precedence, for example, in Islamic law for this. In Islamic law, there is precedence for women to be awarded financial assets for non-financial contributions. And this is something which, because Islamic law is often seen as, as discriminating towards, as uniformly discriminatory towards women, some of these more nuanced components of it are often overlooked. And so this is one area, for example, in many Muslim countries, which can be developed. This is one area which can be developed. This is an area in which, if we were to advocate for higher levels of legal literacy, both amongst women as well amongst those working in NGOs and organizations which are promoting women's rights, if they were to know about these kinds of positions, they would be able to help women advocate for themselves in these situations, primarily because there is precedence in Islamic law for these positions.
Yeah, I would like to say something about that. I mean, if we really want to radically improve this financial status of Muslim women, let's go back to Islamic law and the precedents in it, where in Islamic law, Muslim women are not obligated to do housework. And if they do it, they're entitled to compensation. They're not required to cook or wash or clean. And if they do it, they're entitled to immediate compensation from the husband. Because in fact, it's the husband who ought to be either doing these things or getting somebody to do them. This is not feminist works of the 21st century. This is medieval literature and cases that existed a long time ago. Furthermore, and I would like to recognize as we are introducing this topic, the presence of the notable international jurist from Morocco, Dr. Raja Naji Makkawi. She knows and has written about the financial system of property distribution in Morocco in medieval times and more recent times, where in fact, the woman, if she contributes in the field or to the business, she's considered a partner, and the property is considered partnership property and is dealt with on the basis of partnership law. The Muslim woman's property, when she gets into the marriage, does not become marital property. It's hers, and whatever income she develops or assets she acquires during the marriage, whether through her own efforts or otherwise, there is very serious and steadfast precedent that it is her single property and not a marital property with the husband. So there are a lot of sources, many more sources of funds for Muslim women, not only through work, but through inheritance, through mahr, through various other avenues that I'm writing about now in my book, that would actually result in Muslim women being quite well-to-do. And if you look at the Gulf, for example, you'll find very, very many Muslim women who are well-to-do. The problem is that when you get to the average Muslim woman, she does not know her rights. And when you look at the average Muslim country, they do not advocate the financial rights of Muslim women. I have traveled many, many Muslim countries, more than 14, 15 Muslim countries, talked to the scholars amongst them about the financial rights of Muslim women upon divorce. They only thought that the delayed part of the marital gift, i.e. the mahr, is what is owed to her. They didn't really have much of an answer.